My name is Jacob Akou. I'm a lawyer and founding partner of Dayspring Law Firm. Our law firm is a full-service law firm that represents businesses, individuals, and governments in prosecuting various legal and transactional issues in Cameroon. We have been in business for 2.5 years as a team, but we all have individual experiences working in other bigger law firms in Cameroon and Europe. And our law firm has been advising heavy companies from around the world during the 2 years it's existed, and we've been able to set ourselves apart within our country. And I look forward to discussing with you.
Hey, it's Kellen, and today on Diversified Game, I'm happy to give you some legal game. I got a real barrister, attorney, lawyer. Chief Jacob Akou is going to give us the game about Cameroon. And if you guys always ask me, so how do you do this? How do you do business in Africa? You know what? It starts with your plan, your prayers, and you also need to have your budget for your attorney, because you do not want to just start doing stuff without some legal advice. You do not know the rules and the laws from country to country, and maybe even city to city, state to state, parish to parish. So you guys, make sure you tune into this game. Chief Jacob, how are you doing today, my brother?
I'm okay, Kellen. How are you, my brother?
All is blessed by the best. I'm so happy to have you, because one of the hardest things for people who do go, like myself, and go grab a citizenship or go do some business, the hardest part for people is to find legal representation that they can trust. And let me give you an example, just so you know. We've called lawyers in different countries. They think, you know, we're small Peking and we don't know anything, and we get 10 times the price.
Yeah.
And then, hold on, how many million? And no, that's not the price. Oh, because I sound like this, you think about me and stop all day. No, I'm not your Gary. I'm supposed to be your client, so we can't do business. You can't cut yourself out of a deal. But can you give us the game and tell us, you know, you're still what they consider a young man. How did you get into law? Why law? How is the legal system in Cameroon right now?
Thank you very much, Kelly. That's quite an interesting resume of the way things work in our jurisdiction. And I actually do recognize a lot of what you're saying when it comes to the billing. So before I get into how I got into law, what I practice, but I would like to start from what you talked about, like the bloating of bills by lawyers in our jurisdiction. It is basically coming from some sort of a complex or some sort of an inferiority complex, where they think that in order to compete or to put themselves out as experts in their field, or to be regarded as lawyers within the Western jurisdiction kind of level, they have to charge very high fees. And I think it's a little bit misguided, that approach of billing people. You should be able to bill somebody for the work that you would do, rather than for what you think that person actually makes or may be willing to pay as a result of the work in question. But that said, I am a lawyer practicing since 2011. I practice, I come from the majority English-speaking part of the country. So I come from the common law background, where we basically have systems of law that we inherited from the United Kingdom thanks to colonialism. But I also do practice in the civil law part of the country, which is the Francophone part that is inspired more by the French legal system. And because Cameroon is basically unique in this, I think alongside Canada, the two main countries which have the two systems operating alongside. As a lawyer, you have to be able to understand both systems, the trapping of both systems, and be able to advise your clients, because most of the work has cut across those two jurisdictions, and you have to be able to guide them within each jurisdiction, give them expert advice to be able to position themselves well and to be able to be in compliance with the law. So I'm a founding partner of a firm that is called Dayspring Law Firm. It's existed. We founded it during the COVID-19. Very cliche. Everybody started a business in COVID-19, but it's actually picked up well, because we are 8 partners who come from different areas with different experiences. The oldest in our team has 25 plus years in legal practice. And the youngest was an associate, because there are 11 lawyers in total, has 5 years of experience. And we have an office in Paris, which we use also to actually do some work in Europe, but basically to be able to target the French markets or the European markets in order for businesses that are getting into Africa, because it's kind of, when you are living within countries like Cameroon, Paris becomes very, very important to you, because most of the investments, the heavy ones that get into the country, come through Paris. And the ones that get into the Anglophone part, they come through London, but sometimes they do actually swap. So it's always important for you to keep an eye out in Paris or in London to be able to get those investments that come in. And if you're when you're a business person coming into our jurisdiction, for example, I think that was your next question, or just an individual, the first thing you need to know is basically what is the legal framework as a foreigner for you when you get into my country, into a foreign country to invest. And one of the main things you do first is you get your lawyer. And while vetting your lawyer, as I already said, you have to basically, if you are, for example, an American or coming from one of the major countries, go to the website of your embassy and look through to see which are the lawyers. They are not directly accredited by that embassy, but at least they are lawyers that the embassy sometimes has done their vetting on them and understands their work, understands how predictable they are, understands the certainty of their delivery, or the delivery of the services that they purportedly offer. So once you've done that research, you contact your lawyer. The thing you will know for sure, or your lawyer will likely tell you for Cameroon, is, as a foreign investor, you have to declare your foreign investments once you're coming into the country. You declare it in what sense? You go to the Ministry of Finance and the central bank, and you say, oh, I want to invest $10 million or $10,000 in Cameroon. I want to declare it. The reason for this declaration always is very, very important, because it comes to bite you, or it comes to play when you want to repatriate profits, or you want to repatriate that capital again. Once you want to repatriate it, they will ask you a question. Did you declare? And once you declare, did you declare this amount, and what are the profits, or what are the results, or what are the other fruits of your declaration, or the investment you did in the country? Are this all from the fruit? Are this all from the declarations you made? And the second thing is, once you've done those declarations, it's pretty straightforward. The next thing that your lawyer will advise you, or will advise the client, will be proceed to obtaining a permit to carry out commercial activities, or what they call an authorization to carry out commercial activities. This is with the Ministry of Commerce. The law provides that every foreigner who wants to carry out commercial activities in Cameroon must first be authorized by the Minister of Commerce. Once you get that authorization, it takes about 30 days, give or take. The next thing is you actually now set up the company. And there are various types of companies, but you can set up a limited liability company. If you're a small businessman, you can set up what they call a private limited company, which has a share capital ranging from 100,000 francs CFA, which is about $200, give or take, on a good day, to no ceiling. You set up that, and then the next thing is, once you set up that company, you start looking at the licenses from your particular sector of activity. If you want to get into real estate, you want to maybe look at, if say maybe you're developing a real estate company, you look at licenses from a real estate company. You want to get into hotels and tourism, you look at licenses from that ministry and all of that. Yes, all of this sounds very cumbersome, and that's why sometimes our countries in Africa, we are still very low on the doing business indexes. But once you get a lawyer who understands all of it, he can be able to guide you through each stage. And within the record period of, say, maybe 2 months, you can have your business fully functional within the country. And another thing also is looking at procuring offices within Cameroon. Another thing is also looking at procuring maybe property. If you want to actually buy land or something to set up the business, you have to also understand the legal framework that governs the acquisition of land in Cameroon, especially for foreigners, because there are certain places where land cannot be sold to a foreigner, especially coastal areas. You need a waiver from the Minister of Lands to sell land to a foreigner in some coastal areas, which could be potentially considered strategic and national security kind of implications. So basically, that is a picture of how you look. That's a picture you should have in mind when you're getting into the business in Cameroon. And now, once you have all that picture, the other thing that the lawyer will advise you is to look at what to exploit as incentives in Cameroon. The investment charter of Cameroon has a lot of interesting business incentives. You have the 2013 law that was passed pursuant to the investment charter that gives up to about 10 years of tax holidays to businesses, so long as you employ at least, I think, if I'm not mistaken, like 2 to 3 people. You can have up to 10 years of exemption from corporate tax. You can have import duties and export duties that are basically lower to almost zero for up to a period of 10 years. You have value-added taxes that are also eliminated for up to a period of 10 years. So there are all those incentives that your lawyer would be able to advise you to make your applications for those incentives and benefit from them while you're operating your business, so that within that period of, say, 5 to 10 years, you can be able to at least realize the process, the amount of investment you put in, talk less of the profits now within the maybe 5-10 years, which is a little bit, we can consider medium to long term. So those are some of the trappings of getting into the Cameroonian markets as a foreigner.
Let me ask you, because I'll say Americans especially love to do everything fast. And now you have on YouTube people talking about how easy it is, and it soon to be was, to get, permanent residency in places like Paraguay. It's very easy to get temporary residency in places like Mexico. Can somebody now contact your law firm and get that stuff going before they even enter the country and start their business and possibly?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. That's absolutely. I mean, it works out that way. Right now, I'm working with a British company that is listed on the London Stock Exchange that wants to come into Cameroon. They've not even come to Cameroon yet, but we are basically almost completing all of the processes I just explained to you. And once the guys or some of the people will be the ones on the ground, so CEOs and all those guys touch ground, everything would have been set up. And the next thing they just have to do is, from the setup, get residence and work permits in Cameroon, and it goes that fast. So it's usually even advisable, instead of you rushing into the country and maybe running around or wasting your time in the country while all of this is being set up, you contact your lawyer in advance, and your lawyer, you basically explain to him the project you have in mind. He designs the legal solutions that are needed across each phase, as I explained: foreign investment declaration, authorization from the Minister of Commerce for foreigners to carry out commercial activities, setting up of the company, obtaining the tax registration documents, which is really, really easy nowadays, and then maybe the particular industry license. So, for example, if you're a massive guy who's into mining and all of that stuff, try to get the license for mining. If you're a company that's in real estate, try to get a real estate license. If you want to produce solar power, get the solar power generation license and all of that stuff. You can do all of that with just maybe rushing in for business trips. While all of this are set up, you now can move into the country and then basically make an application to get your work permit, make an application to get your residence permit, which is valid for 2 years, renewable. And every 2 years you renew it. I think for residence permit, on the third renewal, they grant you 10 years of residency in Cameroon. So that's how it works. But the problem we do also have among when it comes to all of these things I just explained to you is usually just like many African countries, we have a lot of administrative bottlenecks. So there are times when some of these timelines, even though they are statutorily defined, could be in practice a little bit longer. So you have to have a lawyer also who is willing to leverage his networks within these areas, professional networks, legally go there and push for them to actually issue these various deliverables from the filings that he has done on time, so that you can be able to get into the country as soon as possible and kickstart your idea.
And so, I'm glad you said all of that, because that's what a lot of African countries are missing, where we can go to a video and hear, this is what it takes. This is how, tell people, though, a range of what that costs, because I want to make sure people don't have their last $500 and say, hey, I'm ready, because it's going to cost you a little more than that amount of money. This is Africa, but it's cheap. I tell people it can be expensive.
Absolutely. I mean, Kellen, I understand what you're saying is absolutely important. Okay. All right. Perfect. So basically, when it comes to budgeting to get into Cameroon for legal services, especially I will start with legal services and then I may go to miscellaneous. Basically, as a lawyer, that I would advise, lawyers do actually bill in two different ways within Cameroon, just like in many countries. They have a flat fee rate and then they have an hourly rate. If you're coming to Africa or into Cameroon, where the timelines are very, very unpredictable, and the lawyer could do a lot of work trying to follow up a grant of a particular a license or permit or particular deliverable of a particular filing, really, I advise you to avoid getting hourly rate charges. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. It would drain your pockets, and you would not have even had anything from it, because It will not be, the lawyer will actually be doing the work. He will be doing everything. An honest lawyer will be doing everything, but nothing will be coming of it. And then you'll be paying legal fees without having results or deliverables. So basically, most of the time, I will advise my clients on the two, and then I'll give you the option of a flat rate for all of them. So if you are coming in for all the processes I mentioned, FDI declaration, approval from the ministry, and incorporation of the companies, let's say a private limited company, for the lawyer's fees, I can tell you that I can tell you that my firm would charge a very giveaway amount of like $2,500 US dollars for all of these projects, which involves a lot of traveling left and right. And then for the official fees, for example, for the foreign declaration, you will pay like $50 to the Ministry of Finance. I think that's what you pay for stamp duty. For the incorporation of the company, actually, the notary's fee would be like $1,000 that you cannot escape. Notaries in our jurisdiction are not like in the US where anybody can be a notary. For us, it's basically a very, very distinct profession that is very, very arduous to become a notary. So they don't screw around. They really, really are expensive. To become a notary public in my jurisdiction, it's almost something that is kind of alien because their licenses are granted by the presidency, not even like by the Minister of Justice, which is the case for lawyers. So their license comes from the presidency, and he issues the decree very rarely. So it could take you up to about $1,000 to pay his fees for the incorporation of the company, notarization of documents for incorporation, and maybe any filings at the registry and taxation that will be involved in that incorporation process. So give or take, all of these phases, right up to when the company is on its feet before you apply for sector-specific licenses, if you budget about $4,000 US dollars, you'll be fine. Some people would charge way, way, way more. I can recommend 10 different firms that would charge you around this amount, but I can also recommend 1,000 firms that would charge you just the mere fact that you are from the United States. They will tell you to pay about $8,000 to $10,000 US dollars, or even $15,000 US dollars for this phase, which is basically just trying to get the company off the ground. I mean, nothing has been made from it. It's just trying to put the company up to be a legal person and to operate within my jurisdiction. So those are some of what I'm telling you are some of the actual the trappings of the system, the differences across the various legal practitioners within my country, and also some of the prices to some of the fees who actually vary when you look at those who are basically having a lot of political goodwill within the country, because they do leverage that a lot to actually tell you that, okay, I would be able to do this there within the statutory timeline or even lower than the statutory timeline because I know this guy and this is this. It is good because goodwill in law is a normal thing. Every law firm sells goodwill. But it's also bad because you don't know what he means by goodwill. It could mean other kind of ways of leveraging his goodwill, which could be for a foreign investor from the US or from Britain or France, which have foreign corrupt practices, non-corrupt practices legislation, could come back to bite you in the ass in your country if there is somebody who really wants to come after you. You'll be like, yeah, you got this deal in this country, blah, blah, blah. This guy actually had to go there and do this on your name. And you'll be like, I didn't know about that. Yeah, you had to know. He was your lawyer. You had to do diligence on him to know what he was doing on the ground. So those are some of the things that you have to also be such language when somebody's telling you about all the time about leveraging. If he's very gung-ho on this term, because everybody says that to leverage professional networks is normal. I mean, every law firm does that. Every law firm has a goodwill. But when somebody is so gung-ho, and then even when you are supposed to provide him maybe 10 documents that he requested and you can only provide 7, and it's like, yeah, no worries, we'll leverage political goodwill. Be a little bit wary of that and try to tell him to explain to you exactly what he's going to do if you want to avoid that kind of problem in the future.
And this is what makes you special, because the more we tell and people know, Sierra Leone, you go there I have friends who go there. Some have become citizens. That venture capitalists have tried to bring certain monies in. The president has said yes, but they still have to do this appreciation. They're still getting hit over the head. And what it does is it gives people a bad taste of the
Absolutely.
country. And then they say,
Absolutely.
you know what? I can take my $100 million and go anywhere. I don't have to come here. And so when you, when you're thinking short term of, oh, let me just get this money, think about all the monies. If this business wins, everybody will be making, because you're going to always need your lawyer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there is that problem within our jurisdictions of short-termism, if that's a word that exists or a phrase that exists, where people are so short-sighted and are carried away by the immediate that they forget about what this can bring in the long run. We are Africans, we complain every single day of our lives about our system, about how we live and how our people are suffering and how difficult it is, how people cannot go on, people don't have 2 square meals a day, how there's endemic poverty, people live in shacks and there's no electricity and all of that. But we are not willing to change that system because across the board, top down, there is that corruption in our jurisdiction. Of course, there is. I know it also sounds very cliche and very, very doomsday kind of statements that there is endemic corruption. You can do business within that system. You can, so long as you understand the system and then you do your work clean and clear, you can do business within the system. But that said, we need a complete overhaul of the system. More and more in Cameroon, they have an anti-corruption thing that is set up not too long, I think about 10 years ago. They are cracking down. The tax system that used to be manual has become electronic. The government has actually seen the tax collection increased by like 40% this past 2 years, just because it became digital. So moving more and more into the digital phase has been helping them to kind of cut some of those middlemen that basically pocketed some of the cash, or that forced people to give them the money directly, and then they maybe had to give them with a surplus so that they could pocket the surplus in their as part of the deal. So that is helping. It is more and more becoming predictable, and the political risk is kind of reducing on the corruption side. The risk is kind of reducing more and more. But there is still a lot to be done. There is still a lot to be done for us to go up the indexes of Transparency International and all of that. Because, as I always say to people, just amongst the Africans and African Americans who would come back to Africa and feel at home, we have not created that atmosphere for them to come back into our zones and maybe bring back their money. We have, for example, somebody like Akou, who has discovered this, has moved back to Senegal and is making a killing there, but also he has a lot of political goodwill. But if Senegal was not just looking at somebody like Akou and looking more like to people, like to every African American, like you, or like every other person that is able to bust his tail in the US and make some cash and like, okay, I'll go back to Africa and put this money there. It's a fast growing economy. The middle class is the fastest growing in Africa, in the world. They have a population of 1.2 billion people. So the market is already there. They have a young population, so the labor force is there. They have a lot of young people who are also educated. So there is a ready labor force. There's a ready market. All we need to bring in is the capital, and then we blow up the place. If they were able to think that far, I think we will be out of these troubles for a long time. If they were able to take out all the cronyism and all that stuff from the picture, I think a lot of just Africans and African Americans will be able to come back home with a lot of capital and put back into their country. Ghana more and more is going there. Cameroon needs to work a lot on this. First of all, what Ghana did is they moved to abolish their law on dual nationality. It was a great boost. Cameroon, whether they abolish their law on not having dual nationality, sorry. Cameroon needs to do that. We have a 1968 law that basically stops people from holding 2 nationalities. That's absolutely ludicrous in 2022 that a country has a law that stops people from holding 2 nationalities. It's absolutely, and most of the people in government hold 2 nationalities, or 3 or 4. Their children hold like 10 of them. Yeah. But we did not allow the people to hold. There's a strong diaspora. I travel to France all the time. I travel to the UK and all of that. You meet people who are like, I would have loved to come back, but I don't see myself coming back. And that's a lot of talent. That's a lot of capital. They've decided to be in their comfort zones because it is comfortable. And we are not creating them a comfort zone to come back home and improve our economic and political and even social atmosphere. So some of those things, some of those changes have to be made within Cameroon, within Africa, especially Francophone Africa. I would be quite precise, because Anglophone Africa more and more is opening up its markets, and it's seeing how they can bring in investment from the diaspora into their country. But Cameroon and this Francophone Central African countries have to basically work on this a lot. They have to make sure that they open up their markets, even to their own citizens who have a lot of money abroad, who are not willing to come down and kiss us just to basically invest, because they hold a foreign nationality and they are afraid that one day it could backfire on them, and then they will have to answer questions for holding another, maybe a Cameroonian national identity card. So those things have to be taken care of.
This in real life, where their tax that hasn't out, is when people come back and they want to get internet, and they can't get internet in the house because you haven't paid your tax, and say, oh, hold on, before. And so taxes will get paid, especially by the young people who need internet. But also, when you talk about, the systems, I just interviewed a woman. You guys seen the interview with Nora, the finisher, whatnot. And she says, I can't come back. Nora Brown can't come back because she has sickle cell. And she's like, Cameroon's not set up for that. And they misdiagnosed me. But when you talk about this dual citizenship, or even having multiple, because the wealthy collect citizenships, you as a lawyer, what is it? Is it the, Burkina Faso is blaming the French, Mali is blaming the French. Personally, I know I'm blaming the French and the US, because they all work together. Like, what with them white wigs? Take them white wigs off. What is the problem with introducing new laws? Is it that the powers that be they're not so far removed from what's going on?
Yeah. I mean, I think you touched on something, the powers that be. Basically, in I would a little bit of a context. You mentioned the French and the rest. The historical context of Francophone Africa is very, very complicated. The English, if you go into colonialism, the way the English they ran their colonies in Africa and the way the French ran it were two separate schools of thinking. The English had what they call indirect rule, where they empowered the locals to rule the country, and then they were pulling the shots from the background. The people saw their people running the country, and they knew it was their people running the country, while at the back, the British were actually running the country. The way the French did was they came in directly and they said, you know what, we're going to assimilate you into Frenchness. We're going to make you a French person. We're going to make you speak French. We're going to make you dress like a French person. We're going to make you eat French food. We're gonna change all of your culture and make you into a French individual. And those things still resonate to this day within our two systems. That's why the Francophones would always point to France, and you hardly hear the Anglophones point to Britain. Because once independence came in the 60s, when the wave of independence came through, we have to thank a lot of the US about that too, because people like Martin Luther King and the rest, when they were fighting for civil rights in the US, it was a whole wave that blew across the world in the 60s. The Civil Rights Act comes in, I think it's 62 or 63 in the US. Many African countries are getting independence in 60, 61. So you see, it's a whole wave. So during that period, the English, they backed out, and they really backed out. Of course, they still held back some leverage. They still tried to influence from the outside. The way the French did was they just basically emptied the wine bottle and then put a new wine into it in the same bottle. So old wine in new bottles. What they did was they created a new system that was called France-Afrique, so the French-African connection, wherein the president of France, then a war hero in France, but a very terrible human being in real life, Charles de Gaulle, created a bunch of networks that put in place leaders in power that were puppets to France, that controlled the system because they wanted to keep French interests in Africa firm forever. So you had people like the person who put in place that strategy, a French national hero. You talk to a French person about him, they'll call him a hero. And I understand. I always tell them, like, I understand. You did that to protect your people, but I, as an African, have felt the pain. So I give you the credit for that. Like, Americans would say George Washington, and an African American would see a slave owner. So I do understand. Like, I know where you're coming from. But the thing is, Jacques Foccart, who is the guy I was talking about, French hero, set up that network of French-African connections that was run out of of Gabon, then by Omar Bongo. It started in Côte d'Ivoire with Humphrey Boigny, who was the president then. And then Humphrey Boigny, later when he was ailing, they took it to Gabon, where they ran all of the African countries, and they were the ones who determined which president went to power. They were the ones who determined whatever happened in those countries from the back in order to keep their interests alive within those jurisdictions. And that continued, that gave us dictators in Francophone Africa. Some of the highest people who have stayed in power for the longest in African countries are basically mostly in the Francophone side of the world. You go to Tunisia, you will see Ben Ali was there for 30. You go to Algeria, you had Bouteflika was there for like 30 something. Cameroon, Paul Biya was 40. The first president was for 21. Omar Bongo was for 42. These guys, all of them were in power for that long because the French kept them there. And these guys are Adam, and they don't care about change because they are comfortable in the status quo. So they will not push for change because they turn to France for aid. France gives them the aid. They embezzle the aid. France will still give that aid because France knows their interest is protected within that country. So I think in the 2000s, when one of these French is called Bernard Kouchner, is the founder of Médecins Sans Frontières, when he blew up the lead in the French Congress and talked about it, was like, you people are happy to give them, these are the richest countries in the world. Yeah, you give them aid every year. Where does the aid go to? Because you want to maintain the guys in power who are embezzling the aid, who are embezzling the profits from natural resources that are being sold abroad or royalties from the exploitation of those resources. And you continue to keep them in power despite the fact that they are some of the most suppressive human beings you can ever think about. You continue to keep them in power despite the fact that they have no values that are at all similar to the values you preach. You continue to keep them in power despite the fact that they're not working hard enough to kind of bring their economies into this global modern, not just necessarily global, but these modern economies or these emerging economies that everybody wants to see. And that can only be done by some sort of a democracy which can pass laws that people sit down and well-informed people sit down and deliberate and discuss, and they pass them to cover the needs or to anticipate the needs of the society. So in Cameroon, that's why you would see, for example, a law that is about 60 years, or more than 50 years, about close to 60 years old on nationality, a law that was passed just about 8 years after the country had independence, is still there that you cannot hold one nationality in the country. Because the people in power will have two leaders, and none of them have any interest to change that because they can use it against their political enemies, and they don't want exposed or maybe informed or experienced or intelligent children of Africans who had migrated abroad and were born abroad to come back in and challenge and work in government or get into government and change or challenge their stronghold of the whole system. So that continues to be the case.
And that's why I'm glad Africa is young. And even I want to go back to and highlight your law firm. Besides just a beautiful website, you as a co-founder did something that probably many African men probably would not have done. You have a female co-founding partner. And I say that because you still have African women all on YouTube. I've managed YouTubers, influencers, African women. These men are trying to keep us repressed. I can't date an African man because they're still acting like their fathers and their forefathers. But you, on the other hand, talk about a woman co-founder partner. And even I know that's not been the easiest thing. It's probably been easier to have a man, but brilliant is brilliant and right is right. So talk about that, because I have to applaud you for doing that. And she's probably brilliant, like my wife.
Yeah, she is.
Brilliant.
Yeah. She is absolutely brilliant. Regina is a brilliant person. I mean, I've known Regina for a long time. And she's, in our firm, we have, as I mentioned, we are 8 partners, and we have 4 female and 4 male partners who make up the decision-making of the firm. And we have 3 associates, 1 female and 2 male. We try more and more, we are looking at the women empowerment. The reason why the African economy is also so stagnant, or Africans are not basically moving forward, is it comes back to that suppression of women's rights. The economies of Africa, a lot of the economy of Africa is run by women. A lot of the economies. If you come down to Cameroon, when you go to those markets where you buy small stuffs on the table, tomato fresh, Tell me how many times you've seen the man running their business. Those are the businesses that sustain that economy, that if they go on strike for a single day, the whole system will fall apart. People will be starving to death if they go on strike for a single day. You go to the farms. Who works the farms the most? They are the women who work those farms. They're the women who actually go down with their hoes. I am I'm an African all through and through, a Cameroonian that grew up in a village where my classmates we walk bare feet to school. We went to farms and everything. And if I tell you what a woman can do, a man can never do that. I mean, I'm a child of a woman. My mother is an iron lady. She brought me up. So the respect I have for women is exceptional, because I, for one, think that they are supposed to be the people that lead Africa into what we are looking for as a future. The women are supposed to be the ones that lead Africa. But also, there is this mindset that has helped suppress women for long in Africa, which is the fact that women still feel that men are supposed to be the leaders. Some women do feel that way. And I think there is a lot of enlightenment that has to be done with those women, to not just only see that they could be leaders, but also to consider themselves to be at par with the men when it comes to intellectual prowess and all of that. And then secondly, the financial independence. Many men in Africa take advantage to suppress women, because men in Africa generally pay for stuff. And once they pay for stuff, they kind of feel like they have to control you and run your life, which is absolutely terrible. So some women do let go of that right to be independent and control their movement or control their life, in exchange for maybe a comfortable, or maybe a man having to put food on the table or give handouts from time to time, which is absolutely terrible. And it continues to play with their mindset. And you see more and more, even women who are enlightened and all of that, they sometimes do still go back and fall into those things when they go back to the house to their husbands. The husband is still able to bully or maybe shout down on her because he has refused for her to maybe put money on the table for food or all of those things, in order to continuously stay in control of that woman, which is some of the things that you see, you actually you cringe. So our law firm, we came from that background. All of us, all my colleagues, they're really, really feminist. They understand where we come from. They understand that Africa needs strong women to basically carry it out of this abyss that men have put it into for the past maybe 60 years, because they are the ones who basically dug us into this hole since 1960. I don't remember any strong female African leader digging us into a hole like this. All of us across the board have been dug into this hole by the men. And we think that a woman's touch is basically way better than a man's touch, especially a woman who is sound, intelligent, and and compassionate. They do a better job than what a man can do, even though we basically have had all the opportunities in this life to do it, and we've managed to blow all of them up. So that's where we came about with working with setting up something with Gina, Ferdinand, and I. And Gina, we started, all three of us. She was even one of the biggest driver of the idea. So we were basically the back wheels.
And there's nothing like a woman's touch. And in America, now things are all backwards and upside down. And, before you Americans and some of the Europeans, but especially Americans, go to Cameroon, make sure you understand the laws, because there's the woman's touch. And I was watching Kiss Daniel on the Breakfast Club, and they couldn't even get, Charlemagne couldn't get beyond his mind that this man found a dancer while he was performing in a concert, hired her on the spot. She's touring, and that he's not sleeping with her. It's like, you don't understand. A video vixen in Cameroon means something different than it means here.
Yeah.
And so you guys get your mind ready, because sex is, there's a reason for sex, but it's just not to go populate everything for your own desire and lust, and get to know people, appreciate people.
Yeah.
But your site, you guys are more than just, the woman's touch. You're more than just a beautiful website. You even have courses, and these things are not cheapo. These things are in euros. So you guys don't just go type it in and say, I'm going to go buy a course thinking it's in CFA. Talk about what made you guys do the courses, and can somebody get a certificate where they can actually practice if they take enough curriculum with your what you have on here?
Yeah, so basically, the course concept, Ferdinand is the brainchild behind it, was to give people an opportunity to also understand the law, so that when you go, maybe if you're not a legal practitioner of the law, at least you are able to understand the law as it applies to. I mean, there are different levels. You have the entry level, you have the medium, you have like the people who get into some sort of a professional level. So what we try to do was, for entry level, is to give every single human being who has no brushing with the law before, or who has no legal background, to basically understand how the law functions within Cameroon as a Cameroonian or a foreigner. And then we basically also help the foreign businesses, or people who want to just understand a particular aspect of Cameroonian law, maybe for academic purposes, to contact us and be able to get those trainings. We put down training manuals. We do a video conferencing to actually lecture you on the various or on the particular subject in question. And then talking about having to undertake our program and get to a qualification level, we are not certified, accredited to provide you with something that you could use in the future for an academic or maybe professional purpose as a certification. But we are able to give you that same knowledge to that extent. So, for example, I don't need to get a Harvard degree to, maybe if I do a course with a Harvard professor, he would teach me that course. If I don't take an exam for that, or if I don't even take it, if I don't get a certification from that course, the knowledge from the course will never leave my head. It will always be there. I would have gotten that knowledge. So basically, that's what we are looking at, more of like empowering you to be able to understand that particular area of law that you are interested in the Cameroonian jurisdiction, and even sometimes extend into the CEMAC area. And also even on international law issues such as international trade, with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement coming into force. There are a lot of people who are hearing it talked about every single day, the African Continental Free Trade, who want to maybe explore it a little bit more. For example, you could be a small and medium-sized business that is exporting to other African countries, and you want to see how you could take advantage of the new agreement to see how you can export cheaper to those countries or import cheaper from other countries. You can come to us and we actually train you, rather than write legal opinions for you that you will read it and it would satisfy that thing, and then you throw it away tomorrow and then forget about everything. We'll rather now bring you on board and teach you how it works and explain to you the various stages of the process, from rules of origin right up to declarations and all that stuff. We explain it to you in the course format, and then get you to understand it. We can give you a small quiz. You have to take it seriously since you pay for it, but it's also giveaway prizes. We give you a small quiz for you to basically take that quiz and understand and walk away with something in your head. And we are there to also follow up with you after that. If you have any further questions on an area that you didn't understand, even after the course, we can always come back to you and maybe give you a small update, or we'll give you updates on new developments, but at the same time also answer your queries in the future on that same subject if you have some difficulty. So that's the whole point of it. So I think we are the only law firm in Cameroon that offers that service. We started it up free. We did a lot of work, mostly on intellectual property for small and medium-sized companies, which do not understand what they have. They do not understand intellectual property is one of their assets, or one of the main assets. So basically, if you lose your IP rights today, you can literally go out of business, because you would have invested millions and millions to actually put out that IP right into the market, and then tomorrow morning somebody's telling you can't put it out anymore. So just imagine tomorrow somebody tells Coca-Cola it's no longer called Coca-Cola. No matter what happens, they will never, that's it. That will be it. They will have to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to put that name back into the market, a new name into the market. So we are trying to make people understand some of those things. Those were some of the earlier trainings that we gave to people just on intellectual properties, from trademarks to trade names, which are the trade names are the smaller ones, which could even help you, trademarks. And then we also help people to understand some of their copyright. We're trying to work with some, there is a Cameroonian artist that is called Kankwintus. I don't know if you've heard about him. He put out a movie last year that was called The Fisherman's Diary. It was a very successful movie that was picked up by Netflix. He happens to also be a friend and a classmate from high school. We know each other a long time. So we represent him, and we've been working for giving him a lot of advice on literary and artistic work, and also working with some of his team for them to actually understand that every time they create something, because he has a lot of artists signed under him, every time they create, these are the advantages of it. This is how you can protect this brand, and that's it. So those were some of the trainings.
And if you're an artist out there, and if you're an artist, if you say, hey, I gotta have, Mr. Take Another Shot, shout out to my friend Dr. and King Stevens, and Clarice from Beta Media, you gotta know, and of course Blanche on the hit. Blanche Bailey.
Yeah, Blanche Bailey.
So many others. Stanley, I didn't forget about you, when you are on that kick, you need to know the laws, because you cannot
absolutely.
You can't depend on your whole team. You might do something illegal. And what I've seen, somebody who has produced music here and in Africa for artists, just the money man, kind of like Puffy. I just get in there, pay
Puffy,
my money.
Yeah.
But but the law, like, people don't understand the international laws, and that when your music comes over here to America, if you're in Africa, it's still not a fair exchange of monies that you're getting. 1 million views in an African country is not 1 million views in Kentucky.
Not at all.
And we've been fighting, because I remember telling YouTube and Google, you guys don't even have Africa on the map. Yahoo told you the same thing many moons ago, when they didn't even have Africa on the map. So we're happy now that our African clients get monetized and all that, but it needs to be fair, since, we always hear diversity and inclusion and all this nonsense.
I mean, those things have really become like tick a box kind of thing. So basically, it's just, I always say, like, I need the action, because nowadays it's almost like something you have to brandish on your website, or we believe in diversity and inclusion and all that stuff. And in practice, they don't even do that. And it's kind of sad. And as you said, like for artists in especially in Africa, a lot of them, they need, I mean, we've seen even in the US where artists, they go broke within a period of time, because they didn't have the real people, they didn't have like experienced people around them to advise them, especially in the rappers in the US. You can there are countless rappers who were popping, who have declared bankruptcies, who are broke left and right, because they didn't know what they were doing. And secondly, even the getting into those recording deals, most of them didn't even know what they were signing. They were signing away a lot of rights. They were signing away masters and all that stuff. Of course, I know it's always complicated to keep your masters in the record deal, especially if you're breaking in for the first time. But those are some things that as we are trying to explain to young artists in Cameroon to understand, like, when you're signing a record deal, for example, and you're signing something and they say you're signing away your masters or something, you should be able to understand what that means. You don't just go there because you're hungry and you need the record. At least understand it and know what you're getting into. It's the most important thing, because don't get into something and think maybe your life has been made, but you don't know that you still have to walk your tail off for this one. And then once you are out there, you now get into your own thing and do your thing as a free agent or something, or maybe sign to a new deal, or maybe sign in your own record label or something. So those are some of the things that we try to do with this guy. And then secondly, for example, with Quintus, we did have a lot of discussions, try to make them to understand how to monetize their brands and get into fair deals with those people who are basically calling them for endorsements. You would see major companies like, and I saw one deal at some point, I almost wept. I just have problems with confidentiality on this deal. This guy is a comedian in Cameroon, well known. He has this comedy that he puts out and it gets good views in the country. I think it was called up by one of the major telecom companies. There are 3 of them, so make of it which one you think, one of the 3. And it was a disgusting deal. It was very, very disgusting. The money they were paying, the terms that they put in. And I'm saying to myself, I understand that you guys are in the stronger position. I understand all of these things. But whatever happened to fairness? Just be fair to this guy. You strong-arm this guy completely out. And he went there and he signed the deal because he didn't have a lawyer, or maybe he could not have afforded a lawyer, or he was just not willing to get a lawyer. He signed it. He came back with a deal one time and we saw it. And I was like, dude, you can't sign this. So we are telling people like Quintus, who as his artist, is really working hard to actually empower them to understand the law, and he does fair dealings with them, because since we represent him, we always make sure that if there is any deal that comes up, the guys who are signing understand it word for word. We put you down already to you. We tell you, this is going to be bad for you in the long run. This is going to be good for you in the long run. This is this way your odds, put your pen on paper and go for it. And then also, if you're going out there, you'll be able to say your image rights and blah, blah, blah. Maybe it will be part of the record deal, or maybe it will be independent. If you get ambassadorship agreements, do not just rush into signing. The money, I know it sounds enticing, that money immediately to you. You're like, oh, whoa, they're going to give you 50 million francs here. But no. Look at it. Just call somebody. You don't need to call any lawyer. Just tell him to just take a second look at the document and get back to these guys, to the people who are seeking your endorsement. Because most of the time, they also know that you will not get a lawyer. So they write in whatever they want to write into that thing, because they know maybe the first figures will just get you, because they know what you make. They kind of know how powerful you are in the market. They know what you're making. So they know the figures that will trigger you, and you will not be able to read through the thing, and you will sign and then sit back and regret later in your life.
For the Cameroonian artists, the African artists, especially the West African artists who do not get a lawyer because you don't want to share some money or pay someone, because some people, if you have a good enough deal, if you don't do that, you're signing up to be an Ashawu. You are signing up because that's what they're going to do to you.
Absolutely.
They're
gonna milk you out. I mean, that's it. That's the game. I mean, at some point you become like Kanye West, putting up the record deal on Instagram and trying to get out of it, and you won't be able to get out.
Yes. Now tell the people, you guys are just, it's growing. I see the potential and things. The best is yet to come for you and your firm.
Yeah.
But what is a community give back that you guys are doing, or that you plan on doing in the future?
Yeah, so basically, that's a really interesting question, which I'm really happy to get that question. So community give back for us, that it's mostly through pro bono work on especially criminal matters. When you go to the court, sometimes if you go to court in Cameroon, and you see the number of people who are being put up, who are being indicted, who have no representation, it's mind-boggling. I know the law provides that you have to get the government, the state has to appoint somebody from legal aid to do that, but most of the time they don't really do that. Many people don't even understand that at that time that they have to request for legal aid at some point, so they just get in and they're in trouble. So what we do is, we do understand from the criminal and labor side, those two areas particularly, so employment law and criminal law, we do try a lot to represent people who do not have the money to pay attorneys for free, from the beginning right up till the time when maybe their sentences are handed down, or maybe their acquittals are handed down. So we do that a lot in Cameroon. Our colleague, Maître Ma, she does that a lot in Douala. And my other colleague, Jude, does that a lot in the Anglophone region. So on the labor side, it's a similar thing. On the labor side, there are a lot of people who work, employees are always on the weaker part of the deal when it comes to employment, when it comes to employment relationships. So some people do get fired, or lose their job, or get very bad treatment from work, or sexual harassment, or things like wages not being paid on time, or wages being paid but cut, and all that stuff. But for them to actually retain a lawyer to follow those things, it would be even way more than their wages, because the median wage in Cameroon is about $100 a month. So you would think of it and say, okay, how do you represent this person for a fee? It's not possible. You only have to use your humanity and represent this person for free. So usually what we do is, for labor issues, for example, we pen a letter to the company as lawyers of this person. At that point, the company sits up, because okay, he wasn't just nobody that we thought he was. At least he has people behind him, so they will never know it was pro bono. And if nothing comes of it, the dispute settlement system for labor matters there is what they call a labor inspector, who is basically a government official who can help mediate the relationship, or help in such negotiations. And if there's no agreement, then they can go to court. So we represent them there. And when there's no agreement, we basically take it right up to the courtrooms. And when we get favorable judgments, we try to enforce it against the employer and try to push for it and make sure that the person gets his payment. If there are any damages as to cost and all of that, we say, okay, the cost of proceedings, which we had to defray, you will just, the court has ordered this. 10 euros was for 10,000 francs was for cost of all of the proceedings of filings around left and right. We'll take it to actually settle that, since we had done it out of pocket. But the damages that are paid to you as a result of your maybe unfair dismissal or sexual harassment, that's your money. You keep it for yourself. So that's how we do. And Gina is very, very instrumental in this also, especially when it comes to women that are being fired, women that are going through sexual harassment in the workplace. Because more and more, I think the Me Too movement basically also came down to Africa. That's when we started knowing, men even started understanding that, I mean, this was borderline for the men who wanted to understand. And also women did understand that, okay, this thing is about time we tell them. So we are seeing more and more women coming coming to firms. Some of them are wealthy and rich. They can hire lawyers that will pay that will be paid the top dollar to represent them. There are some that are basically nobodies who have absolutely nothing. And Gina was very, very passionate about that. And she does actually do some of those representations in Cameroon on labor matters.
You guys have got the game. And because I really want Jacob and his law firm to do their own podcast and YouTube, I can't ask everything I want to ask. I do plan to do a game overload. So you guys check that out. That'll probably be separate, but I want them to do a podcast, because even with that pro bono work, I can see you filming that. And with the success of shows, even on Netflix, you mentioned one, but did you see the show? Was it Netflix or Hulu? African Knockout. That series, we were tuned in. I even had my wife, everybody was watching it, and it was done beautifully. It proves that, and I know some people at Netflix, so I'm biased. I know what the numbers kind of did, at least in the beginning. And it was shocking, like, whoa. But there's organizations here and organizations in Africa that are working to build that bridge. So I thank you for the information. We are going to do a game overload, folks, so tune in, because the question I'm going to have is going to have a lot of you hunters. I'm just going to give you a spoiler. It'll have you interested, on that. The hunters and you gun activists, whatnot. Jacob, I thank you. Let the people know where they can find you, the best place, LinkedIn, your website. And you
can find me. The website of our firm is www.dayspringlawfirm.com, and you can find Dayspring Law, www.dayspringlaw.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn. The name is Jacob Akuo. You can also find me on Facebook. I'm the old guy. I'm still on Facebook. And you can also find our pages of our firm on LinkedIn, and you can find it also on Facebook. We do put out a lot of articles every month. A lawyer publishes an article or two a month on trending issues and topics. You should go read them. They're always on LinkedIn. They're always on Facebook. They explore the current legal atmosphere in Cameroon, the Central African region in general, and also international affairs in general. So feel free to go to our website. Feel free to go to our LinkedIn page, and you always find interesting things about the Cameroonian legal system, the Cameroonian sphere, the political economic system in Cameroon, and the recent developments in the markets in Cameroon.
You guys have been blessed by the game. Now it's your job to share it, get it out there so others know. What we've learned is there is no CBI program as of yet, but there is a way for you to stay longer and invest, and you have a law firm that has clearly explained it to you. I thank you guys for listening. Share this game. It will change someone's life. Be blessed.
Hey family, on November 20th through December 1st, 2022, we will have the all-inclusive Kenya trip. Now, a lot of times people have said, hey, Phil, when's the next trip we'd like to go? I want to see Africa for myself, but this is the time to go. Everything will be taken care of. All excursions are paid. You can do monthly payments. They'll have safari and a 6-city tour. You will see Charlie Island, which is something that we did not see last time on the tour. This tour will be 12 days instead of 7 days. So make sure to secure your place on the trip by going to www.wbsvs.com, make your deposit, and then you can start making your payments, and we'll see you in Kenya. Are you tired of the violence, tired of the injustice, police brutality, rampant discrimination, lack of gun control in this failed bias socioeconomic experiment called America? Or maybe you need a break from the relentless grind and want to regain control of your destiny, your wealth, your health, and your purpose. DiversifiedGame.com has the right course for you. Prepare for my first trip to Africa. Looking to reconnect with your roots, start a new business, or just a fresh start. Africa, aka the motherland, is waiting. Don't let the Chinese and the Mzungus have the fun and also take over the motherland. From Cairo to Mombasa, from Dakar to Cape Town, Africa has something for everyone, from business opportunities to the most amazing people, safety, leisure, and landscapes. The opportunities abound. It is time for the diaspora to reconnect with their roots. Time to reconnect with the birthplace of humanity. Africa is the last frontier. Get your head in the game and reclaim your legacy. The writing is on the wall. Babylon is falling. Give up the stress, grind, and violence inflicted on our people on this continent and prepare for a journey of restoration and joy by connecting with the land of your ancestors. Check out our new course and kick off your adventure at diversifiedgame.com.